Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to talk about quest markers. Specifically, I want to answer a question from Wes9353 who asks, a question about quest markers. What do you prefer? Pointing at the quest item or quest enemy, even if the enemy is invisible, or a quest marker that turns into a search radius, or no quest marker? Figure it out through dialogue or environmental storytelling. That's a good question. And the reason it's a good question is if you've played any of my games, you've seen that I have totally vacillated between all of those. I have gone from no quest markers at all, like in Fallout and Arcanum, to quest markers in areas, like we did in WildStar, to quest markers on the specific thing you're looking for in my latest games. So here's the thing. If you do no quest markers, there are people who would really dislike the game. And then some people love it. If you do area markers, there are some people who don't like it because they don't like having quest markers. And then there's people who don't like it because they want them on something specific. And then there's other people who like it. And then if you do a marker right on the quest goal, whether it's an item or an NPC, again, there are some people who like it, some people hate it. What you need to learn from this is you will not make everybody happy. You just will not. Now, I know someone clever out there is already thinking, well, why don't you just make it an option or roll it in with the game difficulty if you don't want it to be a separate option? Here's why. I've worked with game developers who hate when you have any option at all that changes gameplay mechanics. Sound options, visual options, accessibility, yeah. But their attitude is you really need to make up your mind on design mechanics and just put them in the game. And then difficulty should really be for things that make the combat harder and certain skill usages harder. Not, oh, we couldn't decide on a user interface for quests, so we rolled it into game difficulty. Also, just so you know, I've seen players complain if a game allows game markers at all, even if they could turn them off in options. So, if you think putting them in options is going to solve it, there are game developers and game players who hate that. So, you're not going to solve it that way. And also, if the decision you make is let's not have game markers at all, know that everybody just looks things up online. Everybody. So unless the location of the thing they have to go look for is completely randomized, like it's a person who walks around or it's an item that can be in one of 5 places and you're not going to mark where they are, they're going to look it up. And they're just going to go to... And even if it is randomized, I'm sure enough people will play that will go, it's in one of these 5 places, go look. So that's a lot of rambling and a lot of background, a lot of context. But let me tell you, if I had to pick one today, based on how I feel today, and history with stuff with games, I would go with area markers for quests. With the size of the area that the marker says it's referring to, something that can be varied based on the quest. So the quest designer can decide what to do there. Now, specifically, what I mean is when someone's making a quest, they can say, hey, the monster's on dungeon level 2 in this part of the dungeon. Or they may just say, here's a quest marker at the front of the dungeon. It's the monster somewhere in the dungeon. Or they may just put a quest marker in the valley and say, boom, with a big radius, the monster's somewhere in this valley. And the player would have to discover, oh, it's in this dungeon, level 2, up in the corner. Why would I choose this? Well, because you can pick any radius you want. And by the way, I've worked on games where they let you make complex quest area shapes. Personally, I just think a simple circle where you pick the radius is fine. The reason I like this is if you pick a really tight radius, you can pretty much have quest markers the way they're in games that put quest markers on things. If you pick a big radius, saying it's somewhere in this valley, the NPC may have told you that. Oh, the monster's located in this valley. And then depending on what you set as where the marker is placed, if the marker is just at a random location in the valley or on the dungeon or in a particular dungeon corner or on the monster itself with a radius, so you're still never quite sure where it is. All of these work for any different kind of design you want. If you decide you really just wanted markers on the item or NPC, just put them on the item or NPC and put a small radius. If you decide, I don't really want to do that, put it outside the dungeon with a big radius. And you have anything in between. Maybe you can make some quests work a certain way and some work others. And the player can tell when they look. Like, oh, it's somewhere in that area. And then if the radius is really small, it can just go, there it is. That's the thing you want. If you wanted, you could even have the quest marker say something on it. So then the quest giver can have it say, here's the monster, or can say, the monster's anywhere in this valley, even though they can see that it's a marker with a big radius. So that way the player who's playing doesn't have to guess what you were thinking. He can just look at the quest marker and go, oh, the monster's somewhere in this valley. One thing I would support, because I've seen this happen enough, is multiple markers for one quest. So it might be, hey, you have to find this item, but it could be in any of these 5 dungeons, and it just marks all 5 dungeons. And as you go to each one, maybe it can remove those markers. Or it may be, I want you to go kill these 5 bandits. And it marks all 5 bandits, maybe with a radius. And then as you kill them, they get marked off. The reason I think you should consider multiple markers per quest is I've seen enough good quest designs that needed multiple markers. And like radius, since you put that under the player control, the quest designer's control, if they only need one marker, that's the default. But if they need multiple markers, it supports it. And multiple markers really come in when there's 2 cases. One where it could be in any of those locations, or one where you have to go to all those locations. So it could be, hey, gold may be found in any of these 5 mines, or it may be, I want you to go mine gold in all 5 of these mines to get the quest completion. So I think if I were to make a design today, I would do any quest can have, it defaults to 1 quest marker, but you can add more if you want. And it defaults to a small circular radius, but the quest giver can increase that if they want. I think that gives you the best of all worlds. And if you're making your game and you don't know what you want, it can be specialized into one of any of the other types very easily. So if you decide, I don't want multiple markers and I want them to be on the creature, keep the default of 1, don't use multiple markers, put them right on the creatures and give them a very tiny radius. Or if you decide later, I want to use a smattering of all those, you've got it available. It's basically a tool. Decide how you want to use it. So I hope that answers your question. Wes9353.